we don't get distracted with shiny objects. If someone came to me with $1 million cyber account, I'm still not going to quote it. I'm still not going to go after it. I don't bring value to that. The hard market, specifically in healthcare, human services, not so much life sciences, that's still super soft. And there's another 7 entrants since Q4 last year. So it's not getting any harder, at least for now.
When you get into the professional liability, in most, if not all cases, that application becomes a material part of the policy. Mm-hmm. And what you're covered for is basically what you described as your operations on the application.
We are a pretty unique team in what we're putting together. I have 5 people on my team underneath me, and all of us have done nothing our entire careers but medical malpractice space, the human service space, and the life sciences. When it comes to like picking carriers and what the insured is most likely going to pick, it's not our decision. It's not my pocketbook. So we show them the litany. We'll show them the crappy, cheap coverage. We'll show them the best in class. We'll obviously give them all the information on why it should be best in class, but I'm not writing the check.
I think a lot of it goes back to people just wanting to make sure they get the deal done and sell the policy, as opposed to actually advising their clients on the right thing to do.
There are some agents who are just connected with the right people, yeah. and that's all you need to be, is a connector. Even if you specialize in, contractors or whatever it is, but you have a buddy who runs a physician practice, that's when I get tagged in a lot. It's like some people are just great connectors.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, we are featuring one of our sponsors for Producers in Paradise 2025 in Key West. My goodness, I cannot believe we are literally only 2 months away. It seems like only yesterday that we wrapped it up, man, from last year. And, the thing is, I don't think people realize that when last year is over, planning for next year begins almost right away. It's been a lot. And, we've had a lot of stuff go on. Obviously I don't get into political things on the podcast. Don't really need to. But, it is a fact of life right now that we're dealing with the tariff situation. And I was concerned as to how that was going to help me source like some of the swag stuff that we get, because I'm sure some of it comes from overseas. So far, so good. No problems. So I'm happy about that. But, I'm wrapped up with my stuff for it. I'm just looking forward to everybody coming down. It'll be your first time coming to hang with the crew.
Can't wait.
We've got a pretty good registration, so it's going to be the biggest one yet. Every year I get to say that, and I think one of these years I'm going to say this is the biggest I'm ever going to let it be. But now, it's still manageable. Yeah, it's still manageable for right now. But anyhow, our guest today is Mr. Dylan Jordan from Amwins, and if you write anything at all social services, nonprofit related, and I'm going to let him get into a little bit more of his appetite. Listen, there are people out there that I've had relationships with for years, and I'll refer somebody over to them, and I have a feeling they're going to do a pretty good job, but there's times that I get let down. I can say unequivocally, I have never once sent anybody to Dylan at Amwins in his wheelhouse that he hasn't gotten the deal done. And if he hasn't been able to get the deal done, he's at least been able to communicate it, but I don't even really know that there's any that you haven't been able to get done. I had that one that I sent you where the lady flaked on me a little bit, and I take responsibility for that. I don't know what her deal was, but I think everybody else has given me very, very positive feedback about how well you and your team have performed. And this is an opportunity for the rest of the people out there to figure out why where they need to go with their stuff. And the thing is, guys, like, Dylan's not looking for everything to be pristine, right? Like, I feel like the harder to play stuff is really where you excel because of your experience in doing that and your market selection. I mean, let's face it, you're a wholesaler for people who either A, don't know anything at all about the types of risks that they're submitting to you, so you can be a really valuable resource there, or you're there because we can't get it placed with Philly directly or somebody like that. Maybe it's a little bit more cumbersome than what an admitted market would be wanting to do. And I know that you have both admitted and non-admitted. So why don't you just kind of tell everybody, what's going on in the general marketplace with you right now? Because I feel like we've had some wins inside the Killing Commercial family with you that have gotten back to me when I've sent people over. And I think this is a class of business that a lot of people probably end up either doing a really bad job of writing because they don't know what they're doing, or they run from it because they don't know where they're doing. And you can help them either way.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, man, I appreciate the kind words. I'm glad my head didn't get too big for the screen here after all that. But no, it's been a pleasure working with you and everybody else you sent over our way. We are a pretty unique team in what we're putting together. I have 5 people on my team underneath me, and all of us have done nothing our entire careers but the medical malpractice space, the human service space, and the life sciences. If cyber or D&O or attorneys, whatever it is, if those come across our desk, we hand them off. Do we have the markets that we could do it? Sure, we can place it, but then we become a Joe Schmo wholesaler that's just a professional forwarding machine. The underwriter asked this, here's the answer, back forth, and not bringing any value to the table. So we've micro niched into what we're doing in those sectors, and really only the GLPL excess.
My friend Charles Specht would be very proud of you saying micro niche. Yeah. That's one of his favorite words.
Oh, I love Charles. Yeah, and it's worked on our end, man. I mean, for the wholesale space, we close on new business half the accounts we get in from submit to bind.
That's got to be like really high for wholesale.
Substantial.
Business. I was going to say.
I've been to other places, and on the renewal side, last year we renewed 93%, which again is super high on the wholesale side. But really, it comes from, we have access to everybody that anybody would need. We understand the terms inside and out, and even help the underwriters get the deals put together. And whether, like you said, whether it's an agent who knows nothing about this but is super well connected, or it's an agency that this is all they do, but they don't have the manpower or the support staff to get it done effectively and quickly. This is what our team's been put together for. And because of it, I mean, we've been flying for the past 3 years, and we're just adding a person or two every year at this point to try and keep up with the demand. I think starting Q1, we ended with, I think, 4 submissions a day we averaged. And the past week, we've gotten, I think we averaged out around 8 submissions a day. So we're flying. But the good thing is we know it so well that it's clockwork. We're able to get them in, get them out.
Yeah, no. I think, the biggest issue I think a lot of people have, and it's going to be interesting because you guys are going to kind of get at Producers in Paradise, you're going to get to meet some of the people that are the interfaces in between you and us. Like I'm specifically thinking about Assembly, who does data uptake. It's similar to a WonderWrite or an Indio or a Broker Buddha, but they're kind of the newer guys on the block, and their product is very, very slick. And the reason I bring them up is because in your world, supplementals are life, man. Like, I mean,
seriously,
it's literally not as simple as, oh, just go ahead and explain what they do on this Accord form, because there is no ability to explain what these people do on Accord forms.
That's right.
So you get into the supplemental world. And so it's going to be cool to hear kind of the wholesaler's perspective on that when Assembly's talking about what they're doing to make agents' lives easier, to get that data from the client in a way that they can get it over to you and make your life easier too. But I mean, that's the other thing, man. I think a lot of people sometimes, it's weird because we're kind of in a hard market, and everybody wants to shop right. Not kind of, we are in a hard market. Everybody's shopping, and agents are being a little bit more picky about what they want to go after and what they don't. I don't necessarily discourage that wholly, because you only have so much time in the day, and you need to stay where you're comfortable. But I also think that it gives them the ability to say no easier later, and when the market softens, they're going to need to figure out what they're going to fill their pipeline with. And if they're running away from business because they're worried about how hard it is to fill out supplemental applications or the volume of information that's needed, might want to stop and think twice about that and look into some tech. But
absolutely.
I'm assuming the market is hard on your end of things, like specifically in your niche is what it is pretty much everywhere else, or are you guys okay? Like, I feel like everything's kind of in a hard marketplace, obviously like Umbrella's harder to get at higher limits and a lot of stuff like that. But, is anything that you're doing not been affected as much by the hard market as maybe some of the other stuff. Because we're getting killed on things that were like everybody wanted. Plumbers,
right,
HVAC. Like nobody wants them now because of water damage claims. You know, they wrote every single one of them. They didn't have quality control in place. You know, you can't get highly skilled people out of school because people aren't going into the trades anymore. So you're dealing with whoever they can bring in and try and train as a tech. And you know, everybody and their brother wanted plumbers 5 years ago. Now it's like you have to have best in class to get an admitted market down here to
it's
look
wild.
at. But I'm wondering like how much has been affected in your world.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is the hard market specifically in healthcare, human services, not so much life sciences. That's still super soft, and there's another 7 entrants since Q4 last year. So it's not getting any harder, at least for now.
And you have you have your players in the admitted markets that also have ENS capability, like Chubb and Hartford and Travelers and them that are always like, as long as I've been in the industry, that's always on the preferred class list for those companies.
Right. But in the big hard markets we've had in the past, namely since like 98, 2008, the big financial crisis, there's typically a large catalyst that creates the hard market. And as that fizzles out, so does the hard market. We're in such a unique position right now on our side in that there's more than one catalyst to this hard market, and that's what's allowed for it to be extended for so long and into the foreseeable future. So like tort reform across the states has been going in the wrong direction, even with it being a hard market. Now, granted, I think today or very recently, Georgia just passed some tort reform that's going to be helping us out. And Georgia's one of the worst states that are out there. So is it going to be better today? No. But in the next 2-3 years, we're hopefully going to see some good development because of tort reform over there. But by and large, no one's helping us out on the insured side, on the carrier side when it comes to tort reform. It's getting harder and harder, and the lawsuits are coming in quicker and they're bigger. The third-party litigation financing that's been coming in is still fairly secretive, and these big
you're talking about the stuff from like overseas, like China I know is doing this. Russia's got people that are doing it where
all over.
They'll come in and they'll finance these law firms so they can go after the large nuclear settlements and then or nuclear verdicts rather, and hopefully that's crazy, man. I didn't even think that's a business model.
Well, their returns are wild. I think it was Forbes maybe last year did an article where they're making more money than private equity firms are. The returns on this are substantial, and they got plenty of lobbying money to keep the any kind of reform from coming in to stop them from what they're doing. Craziest part about it is they're actively having a seat at the table with the litigators to stop things from happening quickly. They don't want it to be quick. They want it to be a longer, drawn-out process. They don't want, something where both sides are agreeing to something. They want to win. So that's how they get the returns. And in some crazy instances, these guys are getting 100% of the verdict. So they're funding the whole thing, and the plaintiff doesn't even get a dime at the end of the day because they're not paying attention to the actual words that are in the contract. So the Georgia's tort reform kind of steves that off a little bit too, which is good. But between the tort reform, the third-party litigation financing, and specifically for human services, but more so for healthcare, the look-back periods and statute of limitations for abuse claims in 26 states are out the window. So claims are coming in today that happened back in the 90s, back in the 80s. And how do actuaries...
What's driving that, man?
So it started with Michigan and the issues that happened, or Michigan State that happened, I believe, with the gymnastics team that was out there. Then Penn State, the big issue with Sandusky, and these big abuse claims that were just taking over the headlines. And
even Hollywood, you get into like the Harvey Weinstein stuff and all of that.
The Me Too's, the Epstein's, everything. It's blown up to a point now where states, I think it's 30 states, but 26 of them got rid of it. But 30 states have some sort of change in the statute of limitations specific for abuse claims. And there's a bunch of states where there is no look back period. So you could have had an incident that happened in the 60s, in the 70s that you can bring today, which is it justified for them? It might be. I don't want to say that it's not. But on our side of it, how is an actuary supposed to price for something like that? Especially when everyone was on occurrence form. So you wrote it. It was on the books back then. You're paying a claim today for premium you made back in the 80s. It's tough. It's really tough. And so you would need all three of those things to start shifting in a better direction, to start seeing a softening of the market. And I mean, good luck. It's going to be tough to have all these things start to shift.
Well, and then you throw in the mix weather-related stuff. Reinsurance has been affected by all of it.
Let alone, yeah.
It's crazy. And I mean, it's interesting here because I feel like the market started to shift a little bit. Property rates have softened up, capacities opened up. I'm cautiously optimistic, realizing we're recording this on April 18th, and I'm literally 6 weeks away.
Don't even say it out loud.
Starting again. It's hard to believe it's already been that long, man. But the other thing is, hurricane season's gotten extended too. I think most forms at this point on the property side are recognizing the Atlantic date, which is 6/1 until November 30th, as opposed to 6/1 to November 1st. And that creates its own set of issues too, because I don't know, obviously, unless you're writing business coastal, it's not probably going to happen. But we've got the endorsements that are on the property policies that say if the policy was in force at any time from 6/1 to 11/30, it's 100% fully earned at that point. And so going into somebody with a decent sized property schedule that has to have ENS policies because it's coastal, and you're having a hard time getting premium financing for them because it's essentially 100% earned policy.
Man,
and
that's crazy.
That's something a lot of people don't probably
think
about up front. But look, man, it's because people would go get insurance long enough to ride the season out, and then they would cancel it. It's like the whole reason AmeriSafe is set up the way they are on the workers' comp side is because they originated in the logging industry. So they take that a deposit up front that's a non-working deposit to make sure they're not left holding the bag on the back end, because they would have a bunch of people come in, get workers' comp for logging season, and then drop it, and then next thing you know, claims start coming in, and there's no support. So I think there's just a million things going on, and that's, we could get into wildfires in California, and I mean, it's just, to your point,
it's all over the place.
It's not just one thing. It's a moving target at this point, and I feel like if as one thing starts to give a little bit, another takes. So you're constantly playing a shell game with the total dollars in somebody's program, saving them here to only move that money somewhere else to try and keep an overall renewal flat. And I mean, we've actually been fortunate that we've been, we've had a few in the last couple of months where we've actually been able to save clients some money, but it's been a struggle, man. I mean, we're at a point too where we're having to literally, and this benefits you as much as anybody else, but we literally have to quote everything. It's not, there is no auto renewal anymore, because if you're going to rely on what you get at renewal every year and not do your homework, you're going to find out pretty quick somebody else has been whispering in their ear, and every dollar counts, man. Everybody's freaking out about the economy, what happens when the market takes a dip here and there, what's going on,
which is affecting the carrier's profitability.
I mean, all of this stuff, man. We don't even think about it, though. Tough. You know what I mean? As producers, you go out and you try and kill what you can, drag it back to the cave, and then go back out the next day. But you really need to be educated on what's going on with the marketplace and the different insurance companies. We had one this week. We had a guy, a very large homeowners association that has it's well over $1 million in premium. That's how big it is. Townhome community, so they're insuring a lot of property and everything. And Kyle is the one that's working on it. And he asked me, he's like, what's the angle here? I said, well, the first angle is I'd probably go to the board and ask them how comfortable they are with their D&O limit, knowing that the carrier they allowed to write the property is not AM Best rated. Like, I think that if I'm on a board of directors, I probably want to know the financial strength of my carrier, and they were sold probably for a price, and they don't realize that this might not be the best move. And, that now we're finding out that they had a massive increase in addition to that. And there's been some assessments that have come out against the people who live there, and they're not happy. So I said, we're going to tread very lightly on this, because how do I go to a D&O carrier and say, well, there's some disgruntled homeowners over the assessments, and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, again, it's like literally everything you look at, and there are a lot of markets in Florida specifically that are coming back in, but the agents really have to know who it is they're trying to represent, because if you don't If you don't know that, you could be in trouble. And I mean, you know this is,
Yeah.
man, there's some usual suspects in E&S, right? Like there's carriers out there that you know if you get a quote from them, the coverage is probably not where you really want it to be, but in many cases,
Yeah.
the only ones who are going to offer anything. And so you end
Right.
up taking it. I'm just hoping that we start seeing, seeing it soften up a little bit to where we can get back to
Yeah.
having, more options than what we
Well,
have right
it's why you have to approach every account, especially on the wholesale side. It gets really tricky to understand that we're going through the agent who's going to the insured. Now, a lot of times I'm involved directly with the insured too, especially when it's an agent that's very well connected but may not know the ins and outs of MedMal. I tag team all the time to help with the presentation and be in front of them to give the jargon and everything, but there's a whisper down the lane effect. And so when it comes to like picking carriers and what the insured is most likely going to pick, it's not our decision. It's not my pocketbook. So we show them the litany. We'll show them the crappy, cheap coverage. We'll show them the best in class. We'll obviously give them all the information on why it should be best in class, but I'm not writing the check. If you have to go with the lower limit with the RRG that's Demotech rated or something like that, that's what you have to do to keep your business around. I'm always going to advise against it, but I can't tell you what you are and aren't going to do. So we put together all the options. I swear I spend, you know, at least 3 times a week. I'm on the S&P Capital IQ because we have a membership with Amwins, and I'm checking the financials of these carriers. Because even if it's Demotech, what if their combined ratio is really good and yada yada? But more often than not, if I'm looking them up, they've struggled with their combined ratio for 3, 4, 5 years, and they're making no interest income. It's like they might not be here next year, let alone the cheap premium and will they pay your claim? Are they going to be around to pay your claim? I've had instances where you have large operations who are, north of 500 million in revenue, and they're with a carrier that writes 12 million in premium. It's like, guys, do you really want your insurance carrier who's going to indemnify you to be that much smaller than you, your own operation? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of the RRGs and stuff that you run into, those aren't even covered by your E&O in many cases as an agent. Like you better know what you're going to be covered for on your own professional liability, or you could wake up in the world of hurt.
It's got to be at least AM Best rated. There's some RRGs that are good out there. There's some that are fly by night. At Amwins, I don't even think legally we're able to work with any non-AM Best rated carriers.
Yeah,
like we won't even get it in the platform because if someone like that is the only option, there's still some other option. Shout out to Bart over at Prime Insurance, who's always able to put a deal together. Like they're always game to put a deal together.
And that's the thing, man. I think I follow Rick Lindsay on LinkedIn. The dude is a ridiculous social follow, man.
Yeah, that's so real.
He certainly doesn't have he certainly doesn't have strong opinions on anything. But I mean, he's not wrong. You know what I mean? Like I don't think he's wrong. And when you look at what he's suggesting, even for like the coastal homeowners markets and stuff down here in Florida, where it's like true risk sharing, but you're actually insuring against the real exposures on a single policy. So you're not having to deal with going and getting a homeowner's policy and a flood policy and excess liability and all of that stuff. But I mean, the thing with Prime is they'll put a program together. They're gonna price for it, and
they're AM Best rated too.
The thing is,
financials to back it.
Yeah, if you really need the insurance, and you want it to be there and be able to cover what if something happens, they're a viable option, man. We don't personally have any business in my agency with them because we've never gotten to the point. I mean, I honestly don't feel like they want to be the first market you go to. I feel like their niche is sitting in that position of been to everybody else. All right, let's talk about what we can
I had one. It was 100% correctional staffing. So staffing in jails and prisons in New Mexico, terrible venue. They'd been bare for 10 months at that time. And when they did have coverage, they had a 210% loss ratio. And Prime put it together for me. They did a great job, and they did it quick too. They were really solid with it. Now, unfortunately, the company went out of business because you can read the tea leaves on that one.
I was going to say, man, well, there are a few precursors there that might lead me to believe I have an understanding as to why. But yeah,
right. But it was one where Bart and their team crushed it, and they came in and made it work. And sometimes you need stuff like that. As this marketplace gets crazier and more people are getting into ventures where they're not really understanding the risk, that's kind of stuff that happens.
So your average relationship that you have with people, because I've never obviously been on the wholesale side.
Sure.
I try and limit how much how many wholesalers we work with, because unless
Sure.
it's somebody like you that's a specialist, that I know that if I have anything in these areas, I'm not going to go to who I would consider our general wholesale relationship,
Sure.
literally do anything. I only have like 2 or 3 wholesalers that we work with, for that kind of stuff. And usually all of it goes to my main one, unless there's something like an AmRisk contract issue, because one of my wholesalers doesn't have AmRisk, but another one does. So if I need AmRisk, I have to go there.
Right.
But from your perspective, how many people that you deal with are actual niche specialists in what you do, that are you have that kind of a relationship, versus the agents that have the kind of one-off deal that, hey, I've got a friend who just took a job here as the CFO or whatever, don't really know much about it. Because I got to believe that there's probably a reasonably good percentage of the people that have never written this stuff that just get their foot in the door, and they need a resource to be able to go learn it, because it is actually a pretty good, where you play is a pretty good place to go after new business. There's a lot of value that can be added there. I mean, I know that Jason Cass writes a lot of social services type business, and when you look at even the workers' comp on some of this stuff, it's not always an easy placement, man. So there's a lot of risk consulting and things that can go, that can go into these accounts. So I mean, what's your mix like? Is it 50-50? Is it more specialists or more one-off stuff?
I'd say, and I might be biased just in the more recent activity that we have, but I'd say the whale accounts that I have, the ones that are north of 250K in premium, are mainly with the more specialized agents, smaller accounts for the most part. But then I have some agents who are just connected with the right people, and that's all you need to be, is a connector. Even if you specialize in contractors or whatever it is, but you have a buddy who runs a physician practice, that's when I get tagged in a lot. It's like some people are just great connectors. They may be more generalist.
You go to the national brokers, man. That's how a lot of their producers are. They're not really insurance technicians. They're ex-athletes. They're people who have, good Rolodexes, and sometimes they're ex-politicians, that do it, that know everybody.
Connected.
And all they do is go make the introduction, and then there's somebody inside the agency that handles the insurance work, and they're on to the next one.
That's it. But I mean, so I'd say it's about half and half. About half and half. Yeah.
But I think that's good too, though, because there are people out there, and I know there's people listening to this right now that have probably walked away from deals, or have had some that they just were stumped on and didn't realize, hey, you know what? There's actually a specialist in this exact thing. And I mean, you've told me all kinds of stuff about halfway houses and rehab facilities and things like that. And you have markets for literally all of it.
All of it. If it's in my wheelhouse, we've not walked away from an account once. There's always an option to put together. And I strongly believe here on the E&S side, on the wholesale side, our response can never be, no, I don't have an option. Because what's next? What's left? It's all you got. Or you go to another wholesaler. And that's what I pride myself and my team prides themselves on, is we don't get distracted with shiny objects. If someone came to me with $1 million cyber account, I'm still not going to quote it. I'm still not going to go after it. I don't bring value to that. We bring value to this, and it's allowed us to close anything that comes in. Now, if it's more of a casualty play, but it blurs the line between the two, well, then I have a buddy that I'll tag in. But, even in these odd situations where it's between the two, like we had one that was a 1-1 last year, and we got it 2 weeks beforehand. So we had obviously the holidays taking a week of that. And it was affordable housing for developmentally disabled. So because it had that developmentally disabled in there, it's more human service. If it was just regular affordable housing, it ends up being more of a habitational play. So we got that in. It was kind of a, hey, casualty, you run with some markets, we'll go with ours, just so we give them an option in time. And we ended up closing the account, and it was like 2 days before the effective date, we had to get refreshed loss runs. Turns out there was a last minute stabbing claim.
Oh, geez.
That happened, and we still were able to lock it in with preferable terms, meet their contract requirements, and get it done in that 2 week time. And so we're not scared of anything. If it's in healthcare, human services, life sciences, throw it at us. And if it is something where it's very clearly a Philadelphia play, a Chubb play, I'm also going to tell you to do that, because I don't want to waste my time and mess up my metrics. But also, it's what's best for the insured and for you guys to put you in the best position there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. So agents, I'm getting ready to give you guys a softball that you should be asking to all your wholesalers, all your carriers. I'm going to put Dylan on the hot seat, but I know he can answer the question, so I don't mind doing it. But I mean, you see a lot of stuff, man, and there's a lot of opportunity for producers to specialize in what, some of the things that you do. What's a class or a couple of classes of business that you're really good at that you just don't see come in at the rate that you see other things come in, that if you were running a retail agency on the street, you'd say, man, if I were a producer, I'd be going after this?
Yeah, if we're talking quantity, getting businesses in, the home healthcare and Medi-Spa marketplace right now, they're popping up on every corner. And depending on what they're doing, if they're getting the skilled care, they focus on pediatrics. For the Medi-Spas, if they're getting into the semaglutide and microneedling and some of the tougher classes of business, they're everywhere. And there's a real opportunity that you can win on BOR just with a coverage issue. You can go and take a look at it quick and find out, you have a medical director with the Medi-Spa that does direct patient care. Well, that's not covered under your policy. It says so right here. I see that type of gap in coverage all the time. And this is a quick call. I see this gap. Can I take a look at your policies? We find the issue, and you can BOR it. And if you can't BOR it, there's so many markets in the place right now that are just trying to beat the door for these classes of business that you're most likely going to find something more competitive in almost every situation. So if it's quantity where that you could pull up a list of 20, 30, 40, 100 of these that are in a 100-mile radius, those are two that you'll find them all over the place. And there's some meat on the work comp too when it comes to both of them. If it's premium, you need to be attacking the human service space right now, which I know can be a little tough because there's a lot more decision makers with the board of directors. You need to be connected. But the admitted marketplace has flipped upside down on this. What used to be dominated by the admitteds, like 70% to 30%, is completely flipped. Anything foster adoption care is completely up for grabs right now. We've been writing a ton of them, especially from a risk retention group that pulled out in California and wrote a bunch of these across the 50 states. They're jumping their excess limits, or they're decreasing their limits on the umbrella. They're getting rid of coverages on the primary. They're giving 100% increase. That's just unjustifiable. There's no losses, and you're still getting 100% increase. So anything in the human service space, social service space, most of them are going into the E&S side as well, or at the end of the day. And we have some of the best relationships with those carriers because we're just getting them left and right anymore. And they could be really big premiums.
The Medi-Spa one's interesting, man. I mean, what on average, and I'm sure this is all over the board, but I mean, what's an average premium for something like that? 5, 10 grand?
Yeah, if you're starting out and it's a brand new venture that's doing hardly anything, it's like $3,500. But none of them are doing hardly anything anymore.
No,
all of them see a new revenue stream.
Yeah, all of them are, it's probably more a question of what are you doing that your insurance carrier doesn't know that you're doing.
And they care about everything. And that's the thing with these Medi-Spas that I'm finding, is even in my own book, is they're picking up new revenue streams for utilizing stem cells and doing microdermabrasions and PRP platelets and doing all of these things. They don't even tell their insurance carrier. And they just cross their fingers like, oh, well, I'm covered for Medi-Spa stuff. It's like, no, a lot of these carriers write into the professional services exactly what you put into the application.
Well, that's what I was going to say, man. I was going to ask you that question because that's the one thing that got ingrained into my head very early on in my career as a producer when it's one of the reasons why I refuse to fill out applications for people. It's not because I'm
Yeah,
lazy. I'm just not going to warrant that all of this information is
that's
accurate. I
right.
want them to
Yeah,
warrant
that's
all
scary.
this
Yeah.
information is accurate. But when you get into the professional liability, in most, if not all cases, that application becomes a material part of the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're covered for is basically what you
Just what's in there.
described as your operations on
Mm-hmm.
the application. So if you
Right.
bring in somebody to do Botox 3 days a week and another
Mm-hmm.
person to do like some sort of laser treatment and that wasn't disclosed,
Mm-hmm.
you're likely not covered for that because it's not contemplated in the description of ops that you gave them when you applied
Right.
coverage.
I had a guy who was doing it was an IV clinic, and their IVs were effectively just electrolytes. And then the renewal comes around. Have there been any material changes? Like, oh yeah, we started putting in exosomal stem cells into the IV bags. We did that about 7 months ago. I'm like, that's a huge. It's like it's what's the difference? It's still an IV bag. Or like if you get the wrong stem cells and they don't work with the body, it can kill them. Like that's
Yeah.
we're talking about a huge difference here. But these things are just happening so quick. So there's a huge gap in one, the conversation between these insureds and their agents, but two, what they think they're covered for and what they're actually covered for, and they're everywhere. And even RFK Jr., not political, just put out or had a good conversation about the GLP ones, the semaglutides, the Ozempics, and everything like that, that are drugs that are FDA approved for those with diabetes. People have been using them not FDA approved just for generic weight loss. And it's already been pushed away on the FDA side. It's not, people aren't loving it. Insurance carriers have typically some sort of exclusion for non FDA approved services. But now RFK Jr. is even saying we would prefer that people look at lifestyle changes first, and then maybe we can turn to the GLP ones, which is just saying FDA is coming against these semaglutides. Now the government's starting to come against these semaglutides. It's getting harder and harder to just start actively utilizing these in the med spas, but everybody's wanting to use them in the med spas. So it's we'll see how it turns out, but it's becoming much more scrutinized than it even already was.
Yeah, I get served ads all the time. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
You in social, different social things, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't even have to go to a Medi Spa. Like you can do teledoc.
Nope.
Like I don't know, man. I'm just really
Mm-hmm.
weird about putting stuff into my body that really is not probably supposed to be there.
Right. Right.
And I don't want
It's FDA
to
approved
think
for
I'm getting,
this.
yeah, I don't want people
Right.
to think I'm getting weird about things. I just believe that your body naturally has the ability to heal itself or
Amen.
function properly for most things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not a big fan of running out and taking a bunch of stuff to try and
Taking
solve a
something
problem
else.
that I'm not. Look, I was thinking about this morning, actually, and maybe it was
Yeah.
subconsciously because I knew you were coming on.
Right.
I was thinking about it relative to um the difference between like an actual surgeon or an orthopedic that is a
Mm-hmm.
specialist and can help you with something versus
Mm-hmm.
some of these teledoc or pain clinic places where
Mm-hmm.
you're literally, one is going to tell you what you need to do to fix the root cause of the problem because they've got
Mm-hmm.
experience and understanding, and they're going to give you a diagnosis and also give you a treatment plan. One of them is
Mm-hmm.
going to burn a pack of Bic pens a week just writing prescriptions for whatever the
Right.
person wants because they know how to play the game. I just
Mm-hmm.
need this. I just need this. I just need this. And the reason I was thinking about it was I was thinking about it relative to the insurance industry, man. You've got people
Yeah.
operate as technicians or surgeons that really go in to understand what's going on in an account, and they're going to ask all
Mm-hmm.
of the questions to get all of the symptoms and then figure out
Sure.
what's in their skill set and their toolbox that they can use to put
Right.
together that treatment plan and help them execute it. Then you have the people who are like, "Oh, I got a carrier that'll write that." They don't try and do
Mm-hmm.
anything at all to fix the root cause of the issues. It's a matter of just curing it with an insurance policy. Guess what? At some point, you're going to run out of carriers. You're going to run out of
Yeah.
willing to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's wild to me. And if there's a piece of advice I could give to producers that are out there listening to this, if you're writing a lot of professional liability, which a lot of us have. I mean, there's a professional liability exposure in almost everything these days.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going out and truly writing like standalone professional liability, where you're getting this 3, 4, 5 page app, completed, I would be very diligent in reading exactly what that application says these people are doing.
Yep.
Make sure that they're aware that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is a lot of times our insureds or our prospects are thinking they're smarter about things than what they really are. It's not that they're dumb people. It's just they try and game the system. So, oh, if I tell them about this, I might not be able to get coverage for it. No, it's really probably not the case. It's we'll look at it. We'll make sure that you are doing things the right way, and as long as it's not something that's specifically against a reinsurance treaty or whatever else, we'll find coverage and price you for it.
Yeah, and you want a carrier that actually can handle the claims of what you do.
Yeah.
If you have the worst thing I think of in these situations is a claim comes up and the claim adjuster's sitting behind the computer and they see it and they say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that. Like I've never seen this before. I don't know how to I guess I'll start figuring it out." You don't want your claims team to just figure it out when the claim comes up. Just tell them up front and get a carrier who knows what they're doing actually does this. So when the claim comes up, it's like I got 15 files from last year where we did the same exact thing. Let's run. Because that's what you're paying for.
Yeah, or the other thing is they keep it out of the description of ops because they're worried it's going to cost more money. And I mean, that logic is terrible. So you're willing to trade what might be an additional $2,500 in premium for a blank check because you're not disclosing this to your carrier, and if you have a claim, it'll be denied. Like there's wise and pound foolish, and I think a lot of it goes back to people just wanting to make sure they get the deal done and sell the policy as opposed to actually advising their clients on the right thing to do. And I mean, this is very ground to walk on when you're starting to deal. Because look, man, the one thing about what you do that is true, and we've already heard it several times, there are claims. Like it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I could go in and I could write a plumbing company that's got a great quality control program. They've got average of 10 years of experience as plumbers working for them. Everybody's got a pristine driving record, and I might have a small claim here or there once every few years, but those accounts like that largely don't have any kind of an issue. I can tell you, I write some behavioral health stuff on the workers' comp side specifically. And there's like literally not much rate whatsoever in that comp code. Not for what you have to deal with. And I mean, you've got people getting bitten, they're getting like tackled and beat on, there's broken bones, sprained ankles, like all of this stuff. And it's just it's crazy. So I think that your point's really valid. You need to have a carrier that's able to handle that, but also as an agency, if I were going to go and really dive deep into this stuff, I would want to have an idea of what my value was going to be as an advocate for that client in the process too.
Sure.
Because you need to understand that stuff. Where we're the most valuable is when you have a client who's never had a claim before actually have one and need you.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? And so if you've been through that process, and a lot of this stuff is unique, man. I mean, I bet the claim stories and scenarios that you see on a weekly basis are just nuts with some of the stuff.
Wild.
I had one of my uncles that unfortunately recently passed away worked in behavioral health and criminally insane people all the time. And I mean, he was like the highlight of Thanksgiving dinner because he would tell us all the things that happened, over the course of where he was working. And I mean, we were fascinated as kids just to hear some of the wild stories of things that, like he had one guy that was in the one prison where he worked that had a long beard, longer than yours, and he thought birds were living in it, and like he treated his beard as if he had like live birds in it, and like crazy story. But I think it's interesting advice, man, because even with the Medi-Spa stuff, if those grow, and a lot of them end up being chains too. You end up to 3, 4, 5 locations in the Tampa Bay area or whatever.
Absolutely.
You've got some opportunity there, and it's one of those things. I talk about middle market all the time, but if if you build a niche around something, even if you have the smaller stuff like that, if you've got a process for getting the information you need for underwriting and have the wholesale relationship and the
And
carrier
they talk.
right that class of business, they're going to just hand you
Mhm.
one right down the line. Kyle's got a
Yep.
group of them he's working with right now that he's found this little niche in like roll off dumpster companies because it's a tough
Hmm.
policy to place. And there's some inland marine related stuff with the actual dumpsters. And
Right. Yeah.
actually, those accounts, are not technically middle market yet, but you could go from 1 to 3 to 5 to 9
Hmm.
vehicles pretty quick with those. And next thing you know, you're sitting on a couple $100,000 in premium. I think these
Yeah.
spas are no different, especially if they continue to evolve and
And they
add
do.
they do. I mean, because you've got weight control in there. They've got a lot of
Hmm.
times massage people,
Regenerative medicine. Yeah. All
Botox.
that's
The
in there.
stem cell thing's nuts too, man. I don't know if you may or may not know this, but last summer, I went down to Panama with my middle son, and we went
Hmm.
offshore fishing in Panama. But I guess the guy,
Nice.
like one of the foremost experts in the world
Mm.
for this stem cell stuff, is down there. And the guy that we went on the trip with had an injury
Yeah.
when he was in the military in his ankle, and he was actually contemplating going and seeing this guy and getting this
Yeah.
stem cell therapy. He didn't pull the trigger. It's not cheap, man. It was either 15,000 or 25,000
It's a
bucks to have
lot.
it done.
Hmm.
Like you're taking a gamble. But we actually ended up on the way back. We were in line to go through TSA, and the guy
Hmm.
that was either in front of us or behind us had gone to that doctor
Yeah. That's
after
cool.
the procedure. So Aaron had a chance to ask him about it. And he's like, I got to
Yeah.
tell you right now, man, this is my second trip. Like he didn't
Yeah.
break his ankle the first time, and it's been absolutely, unbelievable the difference
Yeah.
versus the second. But I mean, that's not something that I'm thinking I'm going to go to the Medi Spa in the strip mall for. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. No,
You know,
there's established facilities, and even the new ventures I write, first year they project maybe 1 million in revenue, but then every renewal we have a conversation like this is rated off of your revenues, and their 1 million becomes three, and then six, and then 10 with like 6, 7 different locations. The growth is real, and we typically are writing these RDI retro date inception, so there's a step factor applied to them too.
yep.
So the renewals, as long as you get ahead of it, you can properly explain it. The renewal will grow without an upset insured. It's when you give them the renewal 2 weeks beforehand. It's like, oh, you get 15% rate because of step factor, and then your revenues went up 20%. So here's a 35% increase plus this. Then everyone's going crazy. Shop everything. But we start our renewal processes 120 days out and lay out all that information. So it's never a question.
You have to, man. And I
You
mean,
do.
audit is one of the number one ways that you can go in and drive a wedge on an account because
Sure.
from my perspective, I've been on record saying this probably a million times at this point. Audit should never be a surprise. Like we know it's
Yeah.
coming. We know you're going to have it. It clearly says it in the policy. We know what the rate is and we know how much
Mm-hmm.
projected. So if you tell me
There you
you're
go.
500,000 and you do 1 million,
Mm-hmm.
why are you upset that the insurance company's coming back and saying, hey, you did twice as much business, we would have charged
Right.
you twice as much premium based on
Right.
it? The other thing is, I think that there's a fine line. It's tougher with newer companies, but there's a fine line you run into. I tell people it's not the time it's the time to be accurate, but not proud of your company. Like if
Sure.
don't give me your stretch goal for revenue. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
If you think you're going to do 1.8 million and, but you want to tell me two just in case, don't do
Yeah.
that.
Don't do
Unless
that.
you have a swing endorsement on the back end, which will only give you
Mm,
15 to 25% back if you're lucky uh,
right.
on the audit, you're probably not
Just be
going to get
real.
that money back. But on the contrary to that is also true. And that is don't under project intentionally thinking that you're
Mm,
going to make it up at audit because you may be doing your client a disservice. If they have higher revenues, you may
mm.
actually get a better rate from the carrier as a result of that. And
Yeah.
now
Economies of scale.
get them locked in at the more appropriate rate. But if you go in and you make it look like a smaller operation than it is, maybe not as experienced, they're going to put a little bit higher rate on. And guess what? Audit's still going to happen, but now they're going to have an audit at a much higher rate than they would have if you'd have been a little bit more accurate on what you did on the front end.
Right, exactly.
What have we missed, man? We've been going for about 50 minutes.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything else. I mean, we put out some great articles through Amwins all the time that's specific to the healthcare human service stuff. I think the last one was on the locum tenens space. A lot of staffing that's been going on since COVID, especially rural hospitals are really short staffed. So they're getting their staffing outside. They're hiring companies that'll have staffing, like a roster of physicians to help staff the hospitals whenever it is. Problem is, they're moving so quick. They're not actually vetting these doctors. Credentialing's a pain to get proof that they haven't had a loss in 10 years. So the quality is going down substantially, and they're mainly going to rural hospitals. And so the losses that are coming out of that are they're just it's not being done well. So defensibility is terrible. So the staffing space has been seeing a lot of pain, specifically when it's locum tenens or physician staffing. Not a lot of carriers that are liking it unless you're best in class, which is what we could help them with, give them the information on how do we get you to best in class.
Right.
But those premiums get big real quick too.
Well, listen, man, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, my phone number that you can call and text me, 610-509-0334. Write it down. Use it all the time because we love picking up the phone on my team.
It'll be in the show notes too.
I love it. Yeah, my email's on there. Reach out at any time. That's one thing we pride ourselves on. We're a big team. We're very knowledgeable. We're agile, fast as anyone that's out there, and we're always going to respond to you. You're not going to wait a week to get something back from us. We're getting back to you same day or next day all the time. So give us a shout, questions, prospects, whatever it is, we'll help you out.
Guys, I can attest to that. If you have an Amwins contract and you've not really done anything with it, it might be time to knock the dust off of it a little bit and look at some of this stuff we talked about today. I do think if I were a newer producer that was looking to build a niche, this is certainly one that I would go after and go into because there's a limited number of people you're going to be competing against. And if you can figure out that area where maybe it's the same thing I talk about with the middle market. You want to be below the radar of the nationals and above the competency of the locals. If you can do that and find that sweet spot, you'll never have to business to write. It's just going to be over and over and over again. And to Dylan's point, if you've got admitted markets that'll write this stuff, I can tell you, he'll tell you that because he's told me that before. He said, you can go Philly and do this yourself. Here's where we would go. The other thing that, I would say that your team does a really good job on is these are the things you need to pay attention to in the coverage form. Like this is what I would be concerned about. That's a delicate dance for a wholesaler to do because you don't want to go out and become the coverage expert for a producer because then all of a sudden if something goes sideways, you get brought in. But Dylan said, but you guys do a nice job of walking that line and saying, hey, you probably want to look at this, and this and make sure it's going to meet your client's needs. Right. And I can read between the lines when you tell me something like that, Right. In many cases, it's not that you're trying to give us something and have it not be adequate. It may be the best option out of all the options you found. I mean, there are going to be times where your client is going to have a risk that's just simply not covered because you can't get it. Nobody will remove an exclusion for a certain service or whatever else. Maybe you go to Prime at that point, like we talked about, and have them put something together. But I do appreciate that. It makes it much easier to do business because, again, like I'm not living here in this every day. It's one of the reasons why when I get something random like that, I'll send it y'all's way. We'll take a peek at it, but I'm going to rely heavily on you saying, hey, what?
Just make it easy.
Yeah, make it easy. And they do. They call you back. They respond to emails. Everything is exactly as he said it is. We've had nothing but good experience with Dylan and his team. And that's one of the reasons why I refer him to everybody that comes to me from Base Camp or Killing Commercial is to make sure they get that same experience. I'm only going to give them the best resources. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, man. And about get your Miami Vice gear on for the sunset.
That'll be good.
Thursday night. That'll be hot, but really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk today, man.
Got it.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and I'll see you next Wednesday when you come on the Killing Commercial call too.
Yeah, man. All right. Looking forward to it.
All right, brother. Take care, man.